というわけでどうもメトロピーです。今回はですね、学校でやったプレゼンテーションを録音してきたので、その学校の様子をどんな感じなのかなって気になっている方もいると思うので、ここで流したいと思うのでゆっくりしていってください。内容は英語になってしまうんですけど、多分わかると思います。ではでは。
So, イランから来て、do you know what language that is? Do you know what language that is? So that means hello in Ainu. And so today I will do a presentation about Ainu. But a quick short story is that the reason why I choose this presentation is because my great-grandparents was born in Kawafto or Sakhalin, if you in more English name. It's the island above Hokkaido. So I feel the sense of responsibility in terms of Ainu because my great-grandparents were the ones who colonized the island. So maybe to some point in history, my relatives may killed a few Ainu along the way. So I feel a sense of responsibility there. But anyways, so Japan's mostly seen as a homogeneous society, but again, this is not the case. So Japan is home to other minorities, and Ainu is one minority group. And in fact, the Japanese government recognized them as an indigenous group or indigenous ethnicity back in 2019. And so you might be asking, who are the Ainu? Ainu, they are the people who live in northern areas of Japan, such as Hokkaido and the Kuril Islands. It's like the small islands next to Hokkaido, and the previously mentioned Sakhalin, which is the island above Hokkaido. So basically northern parts of Japan. And they develop a unique and independent culture from Wajin or mainland Japanese like me. And one example is like the language. So the one in the white box, that's the language for Ainu. So Iran Karapte, which I just said, means hello. And some parts are similar. Apparently, the word deer for Japanese is tonakai. And this comes from the Ainu word tunakai. So like there are some connections there from trade and so forth. But generally speaking, Japanese and Ainu, they developed independently. And they also lived in a more nomadic lifestyle, but they've also been discriminated because of their nomadic lifestyle from the mainland Japanese. But nowadays, their culture and language is critically endangered, and it's recognized by the UNESCO World Heritage as well. So there has been increased interest in Ainu culture, and one example is the Upopoi National Ainu Museum. It's in Hokkaido Shiraoi, and by the way, this is the mascot character of that. So that's the Ainu language for the National Ainu Museum, Anu Kokoro Ainu Iko Roman Keru. So there's growing interest in there as well. Plus, in terms of pop culture, some people might know this anime series. It's called Golden Kamuy, which is a manga anime movie series now. So there has been growing interest in both the civilian side and the national side. So to begin with, I just want to briefly go through the discrimination and the history of assimilation of the Ainu people. So a brief history lesson. Japan colonized Hokkaido in 1869. So before that, it was like a semi-colony of Japan, but it wasn't like fully incorporated into the Japanese Empire. But this is when they fully incorporated into the Japanese Empire. But then since this point, there has been increased tensions between the Ainu and the Wajin. And one example of this is the Hokkaido Former Aborigine Protection Law of 1899. It's a tongue twister for sure. But this is because the Ainu did not practice agriculture traditionally. They were, again, a nomadic group. So the Japanese saw them as barbaric and uncivilized. So they decided to pass this law, which is basically forced assimilation of the Ainu people into Japanese society. So they isolated the Ainu people, and then they took away their lands for development. So like you see cities such as Sapporo, which is also like built upon the harms against the Ainu. And they also took away traditional life by forcing them to learn Japanese instead of the Ainu national language, which for better or for the worse has led to the assimilation and a combination of the Ainu into the Japanese culture. And this law, unfortunately, was in place until 1997. So it was official government policy until 1997. But since then, the Japanese government has pulled back upon the law, but there's still been increased discrimination against the Ainu. So this is a national survey done by the Japanese government, and it asks 1,602 Japanese nationals from various age groups, and 21% of people still believe that there is some form of discrimination against the Ainu people. And in addition, by the studies of the Japanese government's Ainu Policy Promotion Headquarters, asked 705 Ainu across Japan, so usually Tokyo, Hokkaido, and 72% of recipients answered that they thought there was an ongoing discrimination against the Ainu. And in fact, most of them saw and experienced this discrimination first-handedly or within their family, or even friends. So it is clear that discrimination and marginalization remains in Japan against the Ainu. So next is government efforts. So as I mentioned, the former abolition law was placed until 1997, but in 1997 they repealed that law and implemented a new law called the Ainu Culture Promotion Act, and there's a new law now which is the Ainu, it's a long twister, a promotion of Ainu measures to realize a society that will respect the pride of the Ainu Act of 2019, which allowed the government to take more drastic actions. For example, they, again, as the name suggests, it preserves the Ainu culture, and this 1997 legislation was the first change, as Professor Tsunemoto from the University of Hokkaido states that it was the first legislation of the Ainu people that was enacted under the current constitution of Japan. But this wasn't enough. So, And United Nations passed this declarations called the Declarations of the Rights of the Indigenous Peoples. I know it's a long poster, where it persuaded governments across the world to protect indigenous cultures of their own. So like if it's America, the Native Americans and so forth. And Japan was one of the governments who signed the declaration. So they also have a responsibility. So, and from growing pressure within, they updated the former law, and that's the new law, and I'm not joking, that's the full name of it. It's the Promotion of Measures to Realize a Society that Respects the Pride of the Ainu Act of 2019, or in Japanese, it's アイヌの人々が尊重される社会を実現するために政策を促進に関する法律. That's the full name. They have to rethink the name though, I completely agree with that point. So, what does the new law does is that it allows for more drastic measures, and it was again the first time that the Japanese government recognized the Ainu as an indigenous group in Japan, but also enables substantial funding for initiatives such as tourism, cultural activities, and museums. So the National Ainu Museum is one I mentioned. And also it allows for more local museums such as the Ibutani Ainu Culture Museum to foster more understanding of Ainu cultures between the Japanese or even foreign tourists. And next I'm moving on to pop culture efforts. So again, Japan's well known for its pop culture, particularly in anime and games, and these pop culture has played a significant role in introducing the Ainu culture to a wider audience. And you might be thinking, oh, it's Golden Kamuy, but actually, apparently, the first pioneer of this field is Nakoruru and Rimuru, who are playable characters in the game Samurai Showdown. Do you guys know this game? No? Even me, I didn't know this game existed. By SKNK, and these are two Ainu girls who were considered to be the first representations of Ainu back in the 1990s. And there's an active fan base for these two characters. And there's additional fan content in the form of doujinshi. And Christina Spiker, a visiting assistant professor of the art and art history at the St. Olaf College, states that it serves as an important introduction to Ainu culture, dress, beliefs, and terminology, even though they willingly support cliches and identity and inaccuracies about the Ainu world, is what she credits. So there's some credibility of how importance they had, but the more recent example and the more significant introduction is Golden Kamuy, which is a series firstly written by Noda Satoru, and the story focuses on Sugimoto, a former veteran of the Russo-Japanese War, who's a Japanese, and Asheipa, which is this main girl, an Ainu girl. And one impact of the series is fan tourism. So in Japanese we call this Seichijunde, which is like, to translate it in English, it's like visiting holy places. By holy I mean places that show up in the anime. And according to the Japanese government, it has reported that there could be a 470 billion yen economic effect, as well as 3.1 million visitors to Japan as part of fan tourism. So From this alone, it's clear that pop culture can be used to preserve Ainu culture while also spreading awareness among the general public. So next is the challenges that the Ainu see, namely in the terms of united identity. So firstly, there are three types of Ainu. So most people just say Ainu, but there's again three types of Ainu, namely the Hokkaido Ainu, which as the name suggests, they live in Hokkaido, and the Karafto Ainu, which is the northern part of Japan, the Sakhalin Island, and Shishima Ainu, which is the Kyo Island Ainu. And again, I mentioned how the Ainu is a nomadic group. So this is a map, as you can see. They're a nomadic group, and they live on their lands. So they had some minimum traits among them, but you can't really generalize the entire group as one. They all have individual traits and individual cultures that develop independently as well. So in this sense, they have a lack of united identity, which has the risk of allowing misinformation and stereotypes of the groups to persist, especially when it's inaccurate, which could be seen in the examples with Nakuru and Rimuru from the Samurai Showdown game, and also from other pop culture depictions, which could further hinder an establishing of a united identity and what should be protected as a law. So to conclude, Japan has going on. Oh, that's me, by the way, if you wondering. Japan is doing its best to protect Ainu culture, but there's still many ways it could improve as well. But still, Japan can be an example for other nations to follow with their own indigenous groups within their borders. Yeah, so that's my conclusion. So that's it. Thank you.